And so it's, tell me about your parents. Are they alive? If they're not alive, when did they pass away? Because if dad died at 52 and now you're 62, is that going to affect how long you're going to live? Because I'm finding out, am I going to run 100? You're going to live to age 100 when we start doing the financial planning, that you don't think you're going to live tomorrow because your dad died 10 years ago and now you've passed that threshold. Like the psychology behind all that stuff matters.
Welcome, Model FAs. David DeSell here, CEO of Model FA and your host of the Model FA podcast. And we are joined today by Tyson Ray. And I think what you'll like about him is he has a really cool story. He's had a lot of success. He's authored some books as well. We're going to unpack some really good topics today, but particularly his energy is contagious. So I'm really excited. But for a formal introduction, Tyson Ray is the CEO and founding partner of Form Wealth Advisors, which is a wealth management firm dedicated to helping clients live a better life. He is also the author of The Total Relationship, which we'll talk about towards the end here, which is a book that teaches financial advisors how to provide meaningful value to their clients by being wholly engaged in all areas of their lives, thus allowing them the freedom and permission to live their lives. But with that said, Tyson, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's good to be here. Finally got her up and going.
We did. Yeah. I feel like I've had an issue with folks recently with emails getting blocked, and I'm like, damn, I'm not spamming people. What's going on?
Oh, there we go. Fixing my, yeah, as technology continues to evolve, and as so does the protection, and it's almost spam and all this other stuff. The filters are necessary, but then stuff that you really want gets gunked up, and most of the time stuff you don't want doesn't.
Yep, exactly. So let's dive in. So when we did our pre-call, you had shared, you had bought a firm about 20 years ago. I think it was around like 100 million or so. And now you've gotten the firm up to a badass staff. You're creeping up close to a billion. I think you're at like 850 or so. So tell us about, like, before you bought the firm, were you an advisor beforehand? In what capacity? What led you to buy the firm? Like, help us understand kind of the journey up till now.
Yeah. So, back up a little bit further. I didn't come from money. I had the eviction notice on the fridge when dad left mom with 4 kids, and I started bussing tables or whatever it was when I was I think I lied on the work application. I think I was 13. You had to be 14, right? By the time I was 16, the high schools were playing the stock market game. And this is back the stock market game when you actually like took out the Wall Street Journal or the business section to see what the stocks were doing. Like there weren't like technology to go type it in. And you were supposed to go pick things. And I got all excited about this idea because not coming for money, it's like, hey, maybe this is the way out, right? Investing or making money. And the movie Wall Street had come out. It's like, oh my gosh, right? The cell phone that was the brick on the side of the guy's head. And anyway, the short version is mom said no when I went to her and wanted to take some of my summer wages and buy a stock that had gone from 12 to 7. And the symbol, I didn't know what the name of it was. I just knew the symbol was INTC, which is Intel's symbol. And she prevented me from buying what's now inside every computer. And I, along the way till I was about 18, kept track of it. But I dragged her in when I was 16, and she said no to the stockbroker that presented to our high school class and said, help me. And she convinced my mom to let me put $100 a month into 2 mutual funds. And then by the time I turned 18, I bought 50 shares of IBM and 50 shares of Hewlett Packard. And I'd like to say I kept them forever. Of course, you make money, you lose money, you buy something else, and you do all kinds of things. So when I graduated out of college, by divine intervention, I got an opportunity to step into an old broker dealer firm. I stayed there for about 18 months in Pensacola, Florida, where I'd gone to college, and did the 3,000 calls a month, right? If you buy 200 shares of Southern Company, it'll pay enough of a dividend to pay your average electric bill. Like, just open an account. Give me something to work with.
Begging and pleading.
Oh my gosh, 16 seminars in 6 months, and it was just, you'd done the whole month of sales training, and I'm right out of college. Thank God I had a little hair left on my head, and I was just trying to, like, everything you could do. and opted the family has sent out an email, and this was back when you had dial up and you're like bing 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 bing, you're waiting for things to connect, and all of a sudden email was just starting, and an email had gone out in the family loop that all of us that had email that someone needed to move back to the family farm in the Midwest because grandma that was widowed needed to have somebody at home to make sure she had her insulin. And to the shock of the entire family, I was like, I'll do it. And the prodigal son came from the sunny Florida back to the cold Midwest in like January or February, and found an office of the same broker dealer in a small little town, and walked in and got a job, which I was the third advisor in the office, and I was 23, 24. And in the character in the book, the senior advisor was like 68. I write about this in the Total Relationship. And early on, I was trying to like decide. I moved back home because I was like, I don't want to have to sell. I want to solve problems. I want to make a difference, but I don't want to have to put myself like, would you please do this? And so to move back home and like, no rent, right? Farm, food everywhere, right? No shortage of food. You go to the garden, rip a carrot out, you're fine. Like you can eat whatever you want. And Grandma would make cookies, and it was awesome. So, but a couple months in, I'm realizing I haven't quite found my niche or how to make a difference. And I went into the senior advisor's office and I basically said, hey, David, show me your accounts after 40 years of being investing, right? So see how much you made to decide if I want this as my career. And he kind of looked at me kind of funny, and he was a little hesitant. And I said, if you're not willing to show me the value of your accounts, I'm just going to quit this job, because it's like, I'm never going to get anybody to show me the value of the accounts if you're in this co-office not willing to do that. So he did. And he handed me his account, and it had wonderfully, he was well into seven figures, and he had picked all the beautiful stocks of the 90s that just ran in that growth era. Ironically, never sold them, so he blew up at the same time 2 years later. But I looked at him, and he was ready for this compliment, and I just said, why isn't this in a trust? Like, do you know how much money you'd lose in estate taxes by just having this in a joint account? And he kind of looked at me kind of funny. Well, by divine intervention, like 2 months before I showed up to the office, one of his clients had died, and they cut almost exactly $1 million. It was a little bit over $1 million, almost exactly $1 million check in federal taxes. And so he was all of a sudden sensitive, like, wait a second, you know about this stuff? And I'm like, yeah, give me access to your accounts. I'll go do some planning and come back and show you what the solution is. And then I called the home office. I'm like, I don't have any idea what the solution is. I know what the problem was. How do you solve it? And they kind of taught me what to do and everything else. He couldn't get his wife to want to help do anything. And I said, why don't you bring her in and let me speak to her, as long as you don't say anything? Because if she's not going to listen, if she's not listening to you, she's not going to listen to you. So she needs somebody else to hear it. And so she came in, and she was not happy to come in. She was not happy to sit down in front of me. And I said, you have a problem. And she didn't really seem to care. I'm like, you're going to lose like half of your assets over this threshold. And again, nothing. And I looked at her, I'm like, how many sets of China do you have? Do you have the 8 sets or 12? She's like, well, 12. I said, well, 6 of them are going to the IRS. I said, you got the 2 Toyotas, one of the Toyotas is going to the IRS. I said, you have 1 daughter. I said, so every left shoe is going to go to the IRS. You are going to lose half, because that was the tax rate at the time, of what you guys have over this threshold. And she's like, she looked at him and she goes, you better fix this. And she got up and walked out, and we did. And we put a wonderful plan together. And I found my niche to then go to him and be like, hey, do you got other clients we should do this with? And so I stepped into solving estate planning and solving what to do with all the wealth. And I'm of the opinion the estate planner, the person that solves the estate plan, wins. You get access. You see everything they have. How is it titled? Where is it? What's its purpose? Who's going to get it? And do they have that type of problem? And how do you solve for those problems? And because 50% of people don't even have estate planning, it was also like an easy way to step in. It was no longer, hey, can I have a little bit of the puzzle? It's like, do you know what's going to happen if you die tomorrow? And so that's how we got started. And then 5 years later, I wish more industry. I had the privilege of apprenticing under somebody who had been in the business for 40 years, learned a lot of what also not to do. But then he retired, and I took the whole thing. I bought him out and took the whole thing over. We proceeded to do that for 5 others. 4 of them were good. 1 of them was bad. And it's all been just, since I've been in my mid-20s, I've never had to sell. It was all about what's the solution? How do we help? What's the right thing to do? We're going to work with everything you have, or we're not going to work at all. Like, you're not going to just bring me a piece of your puzzle. Like, that's not what I'm interested in. And the reason why is because all of my other clients know I'm working with everything they have. So I'm not spending any of my time chasing after some client's other pieces, because that's not what my clients want me to spend my time doing. My clients want to spend my time taking care of my clients because they've been trusting me that they have. So it's been quite a journey, learned a lot. And now it's just trying to give back and help other advisors realize that this whole industry is still teaching that sales training, albeit a little differently, and they're hiding under different titles. But I just feel too many people are still talking too much about the money and not what the money's for. Too many people are getting too caught up in the past performance or how to differentiate themselves from a different advisor. And they all sound like they're doing the same thing. And yet at the end of the day, the industry keeps putting out these rules for best interest, and the total relationship book effectively is an owner's manual of how do you actually do that? Put the client's interest first. How do you actually gather information to help build that relationship with the client? And more importantly, help the client realize what is their relationship, not just to the advisor, but what's their relationship to money? What's their relationship to their family members? What's their relationship to their house or their car, these things that they're going to buy and consume and let go of? And what is meaning to them and what's not? And how do you help them go live a better life with what they have? And it has nothing to do with selling. It has nothing to do with the markets. It has nothing to do with investments. It has to do with what do they want to do in their life and what do they have to do it with? And how do you marry those two things together and create a relationship that you're giving them effectively? I found out 20 years ago, we're in the permission business. Yes, you can, or you might not want to do that, but we're in the permission business but if you don't ask the right questions and to know how to deepen that relationship, you never get the right to be in that permission business because they have their guard up because you're too busy selling stuff to them.
Yeah, it's definitely. So I was in the broker dealer space before as well, and then got into consulting. And one of the things I always give credit to the broker dealers because they do a good job of teaching work ethic and tenacity, the tactics that are, I guess, rolled out and encouraged, I don't agree with, but the tenaciousness, I give all the credit in the world to that. But I feel like in order to get to the point where you're not proactively selling, you have to get superb at advancing relationships, deepening relationships, condensing the amount of touch points you have with someone to get them to the point where they trust you, and to your point, solve the actual problem at hand and not try and shove something down their throat that maybe they don't need. But I guess my question is I'm curious, when you were with that gentleman whose business you ended up taking over, was it just you two? Was there additional staff? If so, how many? And then I think you said last time on our intro call that you have about 17 folks on the team now. So I'm curious to know from your perspective, the value in building out the team infrastructure as you grow.
Yeah. So great question. It was him and his daughter. And then I was the third amigo that showed up. The daughter, great gal, wonderful person, heart of gold, never asked herself, what do I want to do with my life? She just stepped into helping dad. And ironically, when they hired me, they thought I was going to be she thought I was going to be her assistant. And anyway, the I in the first year, what did we do? He was doing about $500,000 in production in the first year of being together. We crossed $1 million, in part because all of a sudden I was uncovering all these other assets, doing the estate planning stuff and helping the clients realize, like, no, we won't trade that in stocks because he was a classic stockbroker. You gave him money, it was going to go in 5 or 10 different stocks, depending on the day of what it was. And in order to do, in order to service, and I think it partly too is the fact that I think advisors need to be wise to the fact of how long they're in the business, their success, you can grow yourself into a problem, or you can grow yourself out of your capabilities. And part of that comes from, we're all like the Energizer Bunny, and that little battery's got a positive and a negative. And are you getting stimulated by what you do and you're getting energy from your day, or is it sucking the life out of you? It's positive or negative. And what tends to happen in the business is the longer you try and grow and try and do all the things there are to do in this business, and that work multiplies, you start getting pulled more and more in areas that there's more work to do in the areas you don't like. and you got to do all this stuff, but you're getting your energy sucked here. And part of building out a team is to start finding out, what do I not like doing anymore? And this is the hard part. Before the problem presents itself, take some money out of your own pocket and invest in, try things to bring someone on that loves that. And so if I can keep doing what energizes me, I leave every day and I'm excited to be here. Or if there's things that if I'm stuck at the office until 2-3 o'clock in the morning and it feels like I could just keep on going, what are those things different from the things it's like it just sucks the life out of you? You can only do it for like an hour. You just want to go home. That's where you start identifying how you can build out the team. But it started with the three of us. The daughter eventually went and taught French, I think it was. And we hired someone that actually wanted to be a client associate and wanted to help assist us. And then when Dick retired, I hired a second advisor. We hired a second associate. There was 4 of us. Then there was 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. A lot of it has to do with, we believe it's about 100 to 150 households to a dedicated person.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that.
And then it's a matter of, okay, is that person also answering the phone? That person, are they in charge of the portfolios? It's like, we used to do everything, and now it gets broken up that we have a team that manages the money. We have a team that manages marketing. We have a team that manages just the client relationships. We have a team that basically is working behind the scenes to try and keep it all going. And then we got to the point of all of a sudden, it's like, wait, you got to start hiring people to manage all this. That's its own world, and I didn't like it. So we hired people to come into the management part, and just because I'd be like, David, you could have, you want next week off? Have next week off. Then I'd show up next week and be like, where the hell did Dave go? Well, you gave him the week off. Well, wait, we had like these 3 things. Like, why did he even add? Like, why did he even add? Like, what? And I needed someone that was just like, no. Because that's part of the business too, is like, wait a second, there's policies and procedures and things we need to follow, and we all need to kind of be in agreement. And I'm just like, hey, I'll give you the shirt off my back because I'm just expecting you to do the same. And it turns out there's not a lot of people that do that. Or if you give them a cookie, they want a glass of milk. And so I needed to bring someone in to help manage people. I'm also the visionary, and they basically teach that the visionary is really horrible at managing. Because you're always creating and moving on. It's just like, well, that's not needed. And it's like, yeah, it really is. And they actually bring me back where I can do things that I have this energy to want to share. And it's funny because I wrote the first book in 2012 called Your World Impact as a Financial Advisor. And I got pretty good response, and I got bugged along the way to redo it. And I just never had the energy to redo it until I rebuilt this team. And when I got the team rebuilt, and when I say rebuilt, coming about a year before COVID. So 2018, 2019 till 2022, of the 18 people, there are only 2 that are original. Luke and I are the only one original here. We turned our entire team over because I'm like, I want to go make a difference. And people were like, yeah, no, not really interested in that. That doesn't excite me. It's just like, okay, well, they either self-selected out. And then especially when I brought management over the top and brought in the accountability of you can't just do whatever you want. Like, we got to have some standards here. It's just like, okay. And I think that some of the advisors I run into have that person that just sucks the life out of them, and they're not willing to let them go because they've been there for so long or whatever. And I appreciate loyalty and all that, but it just goes back to like, you only have so many years to do this. You only have so many years to live, and own your business and go make a difference and bring people along that want to make that difference. But you become like the 5 people you associate with the most. And if the person you're associating with sucks the life out of you, you're not gonna be really fun to work with yourself.
There's quite a bit there. A couple things come to mind, and then I have a follow-up question for you. So there's a book called The Energy Bus that you may have come across, which is all about either making sure that people are on the right seat on the bus or that they're off the bus entirely. So I commend you for recognizing that the people on the bus weren't the right people, turning those over and getting the right folks where they need to be. There's also another book that comes to mind called Rocket Fuel. It's one of the EOS books. And as you mentioned, you're the visionary. You got to find that integrator to complement you. And from what I can gather from you, and this is somewhat tongue in cheek, but like you probably need that person to keep you in line, right? Because you can this idea, this shiny object, and making sure, hey, let's take this vision that Tyson just articulated and actually do something with it before we move on to the next one. But we have a methodology here, and here comes my follow-up question in a moment. the energy audit, right? So I like your Energizer Bunny example, but we have an energy audit that we bring folks through where there's 4 quadrants. Top left, things that you love to do and you're great at. Top right, things that you like to do and you're good at. Bottom left, things that you don't like to do but you're still good at. Things that you don't like to do and you're bad at is in the bottom right quadrant.
Yep.
So it seems like whether you filled out a worksheet like that or at least thought through that, it seems like you have that on lock and you're finding people and realizing that the things that I don't like to do, someone else loves to do, right? So you're putting this
That's right.
puzzle together. My question to you, things that you love to do and you're great at, what's in your top left quadrant? Where do you enjoy spending your time the most?
Yeah. So a lot of this wasn't done on my own. A lot of this was done through coaching. A lot of this was done through the EOS system. A lot of this was done through strategic coach and just kind of letting me see my blind spots. And I think partly of writing the book is the teach learn aspect of it. It's like, holy cow, like here, let me
Mm-hmm.
help you. Um, as far as where my expertise lie, my best friend since I was 12 years old, and he was the second one to join the business after the senior advisor retired, and I brought him in and it's like, here, help me 20 years ago. He came to me about 3 or 4 years ago and he's like, I figured out your problem because I wasn't getting it. I said, what's that? He said, you're like an open heart surgeon. The problem is open heart surgeons don't meet with patients they do surgery on that are now healthy. Those get monitored by the family doctor. You love open heart surgery, but every one of your clients are fine. Right? Our whole system was, come on, let me see the problem. Let's fix the problem. And now let's monitor you so you never have a problem again. Right? Let's check all I got my certified financial planning. I got my SEMA. I got a business exit certificate. Like I have all this stuff to just basically, what's the plan, solve the plan, cover everything in the plan, put it in a big bowl, figure it all out, shake it all out, and boil it down to you're retiring. Here's your bank account. Here's the income we're gonna give you every month. We have all the investments. We're gonna do all the work as far as it's like solve everything, but then sit down with you next year. It's just like there's nothing to do.
Yeah, what are we
And
talking
so
about?
yeah, and it was a coach that basically said to the team at the time that didn't get it, Tyson cares, and this is true. So I cared. Like I still want to sit down. It's like it's not a matter I don't care. The heart surgeon definitely cares, right? This is life or death. But I realized I needed to go hire people that cared in ways I didn't, because what became the job after we got done solving all the financial problems is paying attention to what the dog's name was, paying attention to the grandkids' names, paying attention to what high school or college they went to, or the grandkids are going to, paying attention to the home improvements and all the little ancillary things that people do in life, the vacations they take, the cars, the mileage on the cars, because those little buggers cost a lot when they call out of the blue for 80 or 90 bucks to replace the thing. Like plan ahead. Here's the money. We want to set that aside. And I had to teach other people how to ask the questions. And we created a system to create where we capture all the data to basically monitor all that stuff. And that's one of the aspects of the total relationship we talk about. But I had to give myself permission to be like, oh, I only have to fix complicated problems and teach other people how to monitor the patients to identify if I'm needed. And I'm either needed because the client basically asked for me. Like it's not a matter of I'm trying to not do that job, or that nope, the associate realized, hey, this is a problem we got to bring Tyson in on. And that allowed me to basically multiply my time, which allowed us to basically teach other advisors to basically multiply this 150 clients. And I'm working myself out of the day-to-day client service and more into overseeing how the portfolio works, overseeing how well, it's not even in that. What the hardest thing a CEO, which is basically what I have to keep reminding myself, is what I'm falling myself into. And if you're a financial advisor with 1 or 2 people and you're burning yourself out, you need to start thinking differently of what your role is. The hardest part of my job is to remind myself that every day, if all I did was walk in and say, David, our job is to make clients' lives better. It has nothing to do with the money. It's about making lives better. It's about having that total relationship, and just hammer what the vision is. Because I take for granted, and I would have done this a lot faster have 20 years ago, I learned that my job is just to completely remind them on an ongoing basis, this is the vision. The goal is we could sit at their funerals and we'll have no regrets. And we're going to hear about how awesome their lives were with what they did with the money that has nothing to do with the portfolio. That's the vision. And in a world where people forget that stuff, where you live every day or you just get in a grind, you forget why you're doing what you're doing. It's like, that's my job. But it's hard to do when you're getting the energy sucked out of you because you're sitting there talking to a client that doesn't need my unique ability. They just need to be talking to someone who cared enough to basically entertain and understand, how it is awesome when I put someone in front of our clients who literally can empathize with the dog is dying. And we'll actually send a framed photo of the dog's name engraved in the frame. When the pet passes, they'll put the picture in it as a way to basically say, hey, we feel you. And I had to learn that stuff the hard way. My business partner, we sent off a customized newsletter every quarter. We write everything in it, so none of it's pulled from anywhere. It's all about life. And he wrote an article about his dog passing away. Now, he's been my best friend since I was like 12. And I'm reading this as the branch manager going, got to sign off it for compliance. I'm reading this thing. What are you doing? We're going to send this to clients? And it was him talking about the history of the dog, what it was like for the surgery, how he felt. It was just
I bet that was the best performing newsletter you've had.
Gosh. We had the compliance department called back and she's in tears. And because she's relating to her pet. And it wasn't even a dog. I think it was a cat. It's just, that's the relationship part. Mm-hmm. It's connecting with people. And it's realizing I'm only going to connect with a certain amount of people, but I got all kinds of clients that have connection points. And how do you align values, interests, politics, religion, all the stuff that we're hardwired where our feelings lie, which is where all decisions are made, by the way. They're not made based on facts, right? You make at the end of the day, it's how you feel is whether you're saying yes or no. And I just realized, okay, I got to build a diversified team of different people to align these interests, not to judge the interest, but to align the interests to be able to have those relationships that bring the comfort and the trust that allows us to basically move past portfolios, past performance, past the lingo of the industry and into, hey, yeah, you should take that vacation. Or, hey, are we going to get another dog after that? Or how are you? I mean, it's just, yeah. And that is so much more fun than trying to compare myself to some index or some other advisor. Right. Anyway.
Yeah. I think too, when you talk about, performance or the advisors who are incredibly analytical, at the end of the day, it comes down to the relationship with the client. And that can be so sticky if you do a good job. And I know the name of your book, which we'll, talk about in a bit, is Total Relationship. Actually, let's give me one sec. Came in a couple weeks ago.
There it is.
Right here. But you've mentioned Total Relationship, a handful of times so far. And if I'm not mistaken, you have a particular equation that makes up the total relationship. Can you unpack that for me?
Yeah. So the total relationship there's kind of two aspects to it. First is the philosophy behind it. An acronym called FORM. Our business is called Forum Wealth. That's where it came from. It actually came from a book. I don't even know if Duncan originally had it. Duncan McPherson is a consultant in the financial services industry. He's been around for a decade or two. 20 some years ago, I read the book. And the idea of how do you transition away from the money and into some of this total relationship is every conversation we're having with a client prospect, starting with the F in FORM stands for family. And the reason for that is, especially in this day and age, and especially with baby boomers, it's like you can sit down and do a portfolio review, or if they're sitting down with you and it's the first meeting you're having with a prospect, and we explain this is what FORM is. We start with family. So we want to start with family for a lot of reasons, because money flows up and down that family tree. In the end, that's the most important thing you have, your friends and your family and those that you love. And so it's, tell me about your parents. Are they alive? If they're not alive, when did they pass away? Because if dad died at 52 and now you're 62, Is that going to affect how long you're going to live? Because I'm finding out, am I going to run 100? You're going to live to age 100 when we start doing the financial planning, that you don't think you're going to live tomorrow because your dad died 10 years ago and now you've passed that threshold. Like the psychology behind all that stuff matters. So the F in form stands for family. And then it's like, tell me about the kids or the spouse or the loved ones that we're going to leave stuff to. How are they doing health wise? How are you doing health wise? Are you going to be around for them? That's the F in form. The O is occupation. A lot of wealth comes from the years worked, sacrifice, saved, those types of things. Retirement is the last occupation you're going to have. And what does that look like? And are you enjoying it? And how do we help you make those transitions as job changes, especially when you get, I think it's like 80% of people retire not on their terms. And the psychology of, okay, I was making a couple $100,000, I get let go, I get downsized, I'm making this change, and helping them get over the hurdle of they don't think success is a job unless they go back and make those couple $100,000. It's like, no, here, let's help you rethink what your occupation is. Maybe the occupation could be fun. What does that look like? Takes us to the R, which is recreation. Recreation are hobbies and things that people spend money on to enjoy life. They change about every 3 to 5 years. If people were really paying attention to life, you get bored with it. You get an expert at it, or you realize you're never going to be good at it. But those are recreations. And then the M, in Duncan McPherson's form, the M stood for money. We switched it and made the M stand for mission. And that's kind of what are you doing to impact the world in your life? What is the calling beyond money? What do you want to do to give to support? And then what's the legacy that you want to leave? And the saying is, we want to understand the form, family, occupation, recreation, mission your life is taking, and how does that change? Birth, death, job change, hobby change, a new organization you feel called to be a part of. How is the form of your life dictating how we need to manage the wealth? So that's the background, that's the value system behind it. And then when you get into the total relationship, there is what we would call the life plan, which is our take on financial planning, the wealth plan, which is our take on how you manage the money, and then the care plan that I think a lot of advisors, I think in all three categories, we're putting a little bit different spin on what the industry is doing.
So I love when a firm has true meaning behind their name. I love when a firm has a branded process and deliverable that they bring folks through and give to. And I'd be shocked if 20 years ago you bought the business and on day one you were like, here's it. So I guess my question is, you have, call it a company that's, DeSell Financial, right? My last name. There's no true meaning behind that. How long did it take you to come up with this branded process? And what was that process like? Because I feel like a lot of advisors want something like that, but they don't know where to start.
Yeah. So it was 2007. So what? I would have been in the business about 9 years. And it was the Ray Financial Group for years. And what I realized is the Ray Financial Group was about me, like without any default, without any choice on my own, especially when I started bringing in other people. It's like they want to meet with me because it's the Ray Financial Group. I'm like, I don't want you to meet with me. Like, I want you to first meet with them because that's our process, or who was ever doing what. It was funny. So I was back in the broker dealer days, and I came up with I wanted to become form, and I went to senior management, and they're like, no, the policy is it's your last name plus wealth management or plus financial team or plus the whatever. So I looked at him and was just dead serious because this is it's all right. This is my passion. I said, okay, just so we're clear, I'm going to go down to the DMV and I'm going to legally change my name to Tyson Ray Form. Or you can just give me the exception because my firm is going to be called Forum Wealth Advisors. And he looked at me kind of funny. I'm like, so I'll go, I don't care. And he just kind of looked at me. He's like, fine. And it became Forum Wealth Advisors out of that book and out of that passion at that time. And I think a lot of advisors have stumbled onto, like, you can't be me. You got to be you. Now you can learn some things from me and make them yours. Right. But it's like, I made the mistake for years of trying to take someone else's and say that was mine. And yet it wasn't really mine. And my team really wasn't doing it. Because I think sometimes it's like, what are you actually doing? And in fact, the first book of Your World Impact, it talks in that book about like, what is your value add? Do you add value? Can you identify where that is? Have your clients told you what it is? And so for us, it was realizing our clients are telling us like, it's not the portfolio, it's how we're helping them live a better life. Like we picked up on what they were telling us, not what the industry was telling us, not what the training's telling us, so on and so forth. But so that's how the business name got changed. As far as the processes go, it's been an evolution of realizing as you get bigger, as the business grows and as our job becomes more complex. I mean, 25 years ago, you had to call me to find out what the stock was trading at. Right. The advisor's job was to translate and make that transaction happen as a stockbroker getting paid a commission for the transaction. The transactions are free. The information is free. And so the whole industry is shifting to advice and how you now do, what do you do with some of this money? And your value add of trying to outperform technology or the markets or things is like, good luck. First of all, you have no control over that. And second of all, that's probably going to suck the life out of you. And three, you're like glued to your computer screen about stuff you don't control, but whatever. Along the way, I've been trying to realize it's like, okay, everybody sounds the same. Everybody says the same stuff. And it's just like, wait, no, we really do financial planning differently. And so total relationship, life plan, what we call it, we're coming out with a piece of technology that we're working on called Life Projector. And the whole idea is we're trying to project out the future. It starts with, going back to, are your parents alive or dead? How old are they when they died? Or how old are they now? To help a client realize in their 60s, like, hey, wait, if mom's 95 and she's doing great, she's still living at home, you got a 30-year time horizon. And now I already know that, but if they can relate back to, wait, your mom or dad is still living 30 years from now, like, hold on, we got a plan for that. And you might live longer because you have better health care. Like that's a long time frame, and that becomes some of the problem. And so we work with our first question after we figure some of the stuff out is, how much do you want to leave in the end? Is there a specific dollar amount you want to leave to loved ones when you're done with your life? Very rarely do I get an actual answer to that. Like, yes, $1 million each. Sometimes that happens, which is actually really good to know. Otherwise, it's like, no, I'm taking care of them. I'll die with my last penny, because all that's helping set up how that plan's going to go. And then I explain, which is true of life. It's like, okay, if can we agree to 90 or 100? Pick a number, and they get bought in. And okay, great, we're bought in. Now it's 30 years from now, and can we just go for 10 years from 90 to 100, or from 85 to 95? We're going to call that the no-go years, where you're really not going anywhere because physically you not fun, you don't enjoy it, you don't have the energy, and you've done everything there's no other places to go. Like there is this, like at some point you run out of things you want to do. And I'll tell you, that's not necessarily a bad time of life, because if we do the job right, all you're doing is reflecting back on all the things you enjoyed in life, and you get to share all the wisdom you've learned with those that want to listen to you and your family that you love. And so don't use it. It's not a no-go like this is bad. I want those to be the best years of your life if we do this right. 75 to 85, we're going to call those the slow go, right? We've been there once or twice. Going a third time's not as exciting, right? Things are getting older. Kids have grown up. Grandkids have grown up. Like you're kind of trying to figure out what that rhythm is. Somewhere in there we may be transitioning homes and those types of things. And then we're backing up, and it's like, okay, go years. And we try and help people realize that most people that have wealth, I've found, were saving for later, saving for retirement, saving for down the road. And the psychological event of flipping that switch and going from putting money into an account to taking money out of that account is really hard. And an advisor's job is to help make that an easy transition and solve. We literally just try and replace the paychecks. Like, okay, if you got 2 paychecks at $5,000 net a month going in the bank account, then let's just make it one on the 15th, and we're going to send you $10,000 every month. We're going to go collect all the resources of Social Security and pensions and dividends and interest and RMDs and all the portfolio stuff to solve the problem of, in this bank account comes $10,000 every month on the 15th. And the number of spouses are like, you can do that? Like, oh my gosh, Like that's the cash flow problem they need to solve. But helping them realize, like, let's go have as much fun as possible is the life plan. Now, where we're different, I think a lot of people do that and they plug it in the Monte Carlo system and do the probability analysis, which is whatever. Where the rubber meets the road is, what are you doing in the next 3 to 6 months? It's like, okay, we may plan that every 10 years or 5 years you're buying an $80,000 car. Are you buying one this year? Where are we paying for that? Where's that coming from? The financial advisors that don't figure that out are the ones that get the surprised phone call when we're at the lot. They're asking for the money. You thought it was in the bank account, but actually they gave that away to their granddaughter. And all of a sudden they need 80 grand out of their account. The markets are down 20% in October and they're at the lot. And you get to add no value whatsoever, but sell whatever you didn't want to sell when the markets were down because they bought the car, but you didn't solve that problem. And we think life planning is, what are you doing? Like, people know with certainty, what are you doing next month? 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months. You can get out almost a year, and then you may have an idea of what's 2 years out. And it's just solving, are we replacing the roof? Is the water heater going out? Are we buying another car? Are we paying for a wedding? Are we doing, like, tracking life and where the disruption is going to come from? And then on, so that's the life plan. The wealth planning part is taking the life plan and figuring out, okay, in 6 months, they need 60 grand. Where back here in the portfolios, because we're managing everything, is that coming from? Or are we going to take it from your cash reserve? Be careful. You take too much. The more that bank account goes down, the more their anxiety goes up. Thus, the more they're going to complain or send you the email, they're scared or worried or upset, much less mad because they had to sell $80,000 out of the portfolio that you should have known about. And I learned that early in my job. It's like, here, young kid came in, $100,000. Yep, long-term investments, wants tech stocks. Let's go make a bunch of money. And 6 months later, he calls back and needs half of it for a car. And the markets were down. And you felt bad. It's like, oh my God. But I didn't go through a process. I was too busy trying to open the account and get the money to figure out, wait, I shouldn't have touched any of that. We should have identified that was a need. And so the wealth planning part is making sure they have funded 12 to 24 months in advance so that when COVID hits and you lose 30% in 30 days, and that'll probably happen again because technology is allowing people to click their mouse and liquidate their life savings and all feel really good about it, which then institutions, by the way, take advantage of that. But there's another topic. To fund in advance, or just to know, hey, I'm going to pay attention that you need some of this portfolio. And guess what? When the markets go back to their all-time high, and I have no idea when that's going to happen, tends to happen, that's when we're going to go liquidate. We're going to buy ourselves time. So life plan tells me what you want to do. The wealth plan helps fund and pay attention to how we want to do it, while we're also managing models on a discretionary basis and built systems in place that I get to say, this is the best thing ever. Like, what there are 10,000 people every day, and no one came up with a system that we had to finally figure out how to implement, that I basically get to go and say, hey, raise everybody's, and we just did it. Raise everybody so we go past next January's presidential inauguration. So I know and I did a video and told the clients, I was like, you needed to tell us what you want because we're going to go raise it for the next 14 months to know we got everything covered. So if somebody shoots a candidate or somebody blows something up in a Red Sea or this, that, whatever the uncertainty is, it's going to cause panic or people, and maybe it doesn't happen. We've set it aside, Mr. and Mrs. Client. We take it out of the models. We put it in what we call cash reserve account. It's sanctified, it's set apart, and it's linked to your bank account. And when you go buy that, need that vacation, need the deposit, need the wedding, need whatever you told us you needed, it's there. And that's where we put all the customization. The relationship helps us get the information. We then can standardize what's long-term. And then the third component, so life plan, wealth plan, care plan. The care plan is, how often do we need to be monitoring your life? What do you care about that we need to pay attention to? Not what do I care about. What do you care about that we need to pay attention to? And I said earlier, it's like for some clients, their pet is more important to them than their kids. I'm not kidding. Like, they'll cancel appointments because they got to take, to the vet. Point being is, what matters to them, and what do we got to be monitoring to help encourage them to live their better life, or to take that vacation, or do that home improvement, or fix the bathroom, or spend money on themselves. And then often because the portfolio produces profits, it's helping sometimes just, hey, I'm going to carve around $20,000. I'm going to set it over here. When you get around to wanting to repaint the house, it's there. I don't care when you do it. But by identifying and then often depositing in their bank account money, they'll spend it. Otherwise, it's in the later bucket and they don't want to touch it. And I think advisors are sitting on too much. And then there's the conflict of interest, right? The advisors are sitting on the money, don't want to give it to the clients, get paid by sitting on the money, right? That's conflict. Like, don't pay off your mortgage, right? Have the spread. Well, you know what? Having no mortgage payment and you own the house when you walk in is a psychological peace of mind you can't get when you have a mortgage payment. And there's reasons to do financing and all sorts of stuff, but their idea is like helping people enjoy the life they have that has to do with what do they need, how is it being funded, and how are we coming back to encourage them? Did you take the trip? Did you do the home improvement? How are you doing? How's the dog? How's mom? How are we supporting your sister, brother, cousin, uncle, so on and so forth? Is what we talk to the clients about. It's what we monitor. It's not a conversation about the mid-cap money manager changing firms, right? And I see so many advisors having a conversation and producing charts and portfolio analysis and trying to educate clients on what they have, thinking that's a job. And I think the clients are tolerating that just to get through the meeting to basically say, hey, I need to buy a car in 6 months. We just skip the first and go right to what do you need? Anyway.
What I like about all that, and we'll sort of end on this note before we pivot slightly. So with each of those steps, so you have the life plan, the wealth plan, the care plan. And what I like about it is there's a lot of complicated and just a high number of bullet points that you shared under each of those. But for the client,
Right.
they know that they have a life plan, a wealth plan, and a care plan. And imagine, and I would imagine this is the case for you guys as it relates to getting referrals. If they're in a conversation with a family member or a friend or a colleague or whoever, and financial planning comes up, oh yeah, I got a guy or I got a gal, yeah, manages my portfolio, or yeah, I have a plan. Your clients get to say, oh, do you have a life plan, a wealth plan, and a care plan? And then what that does, that generates curiosity, I would imagine, to the person that they're talking to. No, what do you mean by care plan? Right. And they at least know a couple of the bullet points to be able to hit on. So I would imagine it helps you stand out in conversations that your clients are having because you have more of a branded deliverable and process that you're bringing them through. Would you say that to be true?
Yeah. And on the marketing side of it, we spend all of our money to try and market to our clients to keep our brand alive in their head as far as their need for financial services, because there's all kinds of people that are marketing. Some are good, some are bad, whatever. But the idea of the solution every advisor needs to solve is it's not the name of the advisor, right? Because everybody's got an advisor and that advisor has a name. And it's not the firm because every advisor has a firm. It's that does their their name and their firm doesn't make them different. It's what they do. It's the process that makes them different. We're all advising. We're all at a firm, and we all have the same markets, right? So where's the differentiator? How do they articulate? Oh, I like my advisor. Well, okay, most people like their advisor, otherwise they wouldn't have their advisor, right? Oh, my advisor's at this firm and I like this firm. Well, okay, great. They all, there is very little difference and you start getting into these firms, what they provide and how the firms make money and the conflict of interest that are there, that regulate, like the game, the playing field is flattening. Okay, well, how do you stand out? How do you make a difference? You need to name it. You need to tangibly name it, and then it needs to be valid, real. They got to experience it.
100%. So there's two things I want to end on, both of which happen to be books. So one of the questions I ask all of our guests is a book that's had an impact on them. And the purpose of that is to try and distill a reading list for folks. And the book that you had mentioned before we hit record, which I haven't heard of, so I'm curious to know the impact. And you even said you went back and took notes and marked it up and posted notes, all that type of stuff. It's called Counterfeit Gods. What is that?
Yeah, so written by Tim Keller. I don't know I don't know if it's denominational. I don't think it needs to be. I think it is the fact that it talks about how I think we can all agree that there's a spiritual component to life, there's a physical component to life, right? There's a mental component to life. Basically talks about going back into to the Old Testament into biblical times, but it basically talks about idols, and it brings it full circle. And it's like the human heart, this author believes, is an idol maker. And it's like, and idols, the hard part is idols can be good. And I didn't realize when my broker dealer got bought out by a nationwide bank that I had made that firm an idol. That was a foundational thing in my life. And when that got disrupted, you like wanted to cling, you wanted to get mad, you wanted to express all this energy or frustration or whatever else. And it's like, I made something an idol. I made something a forever or a constant, or a foundation that was never meant to be. It's just a firm, right? Or money or wealth or health or all these other things. And it's just like, there are very few things in our lives that we should put in that category of foundational. And yet, ironically, what in the spiritual realm that's out there in the worlds we live in of good and bad, it's like we make things an idol that's not supposed to be, and it takes away from the relationship things that we want as an idol, right? So I want to have a great relationship with my significant other. I want to be intimate and be loved, but because I made these other things idols, I'm being lied to and focusing on these other things at the expense of the greatest thing. And it just destroyed me. It was awesome. I love blind spots. It's like, oh my gosh, my career's an idol, right? Working out's an idol. Like it can be good until it becomes ultimate. And then you have too many ultimate things. It goes back to robbing you of your energy and your perspective. And it's like, I keep coming back to this, like less is more. The less I can do, the better I can do it. The more, how can I do less and have a greater impact? And everybody thinks it's not possible, but it's like, you got to say no to a lot of things that even can be good things, but they're not the greatest things.
It seems like it's a book that kind of holds up a mirror to your life and keeps you in check and helps you. Like I have a recurring event in my calendar on Thursday evenings that just reminds me, it prompts me to ask myself what matters to me most.
Yes.
And every week I see that and it causes me to, sometimes I look over it, other times I actually pause and think about it. And it seems like that book is a more detailed version than my calendar invite to keep you in check and make sure you're prioritizing certain things in your life. Is that fair?
Yeah. And then when you have like uncontrollable anger, what's it over? And if you went to somebody else when you're not mad to try to confess what that anger was, like, would they laugh at you? Like, that's where it's like these things start controlling us. Like we just lose our mind over the craziest things. Someone cut you off in traffic or whatever the issue is. And it's like, okay, what's really behind that? It was fascinating. And it's not a religious book necessarily. It's not a preachy book. It's just a teaching book that you're, like you said, it's holding up a mirror going, oh my gosh, like duh, like crazy. Loved it. That was Counterfeit Gods. Tim Keller's the author.
Cool. And then you have a book. We've alluded to that. We've mentioned it. And there's a website that folks can go to, which I have an offer. So, don't click off the podcast just yet, but the website is totalrelationship.com/model-FA, where you can get the book. And I'll just ask you point blank, why should they spend the money and get the book?
I would give them away for free, but people don't find value in things that are free. So if you bought it, you might read it. You can also listen to the audiobook, which is not actually reading the book. We actually talk about the book, which may be a better way of digesting it. I just think it's like everything else in life. I think it's a teach, learn. And the reason I put it out there is I want to help other advisors have the joy that comes from making the lives better, because those are the things you can control. And have here's kind of a how-to guide, how you want to word that, how you want to make it your own. Have at it. We'd love to have conversations with people about it. Like, I just want to create a movement in an industry that's still creating policies on what best interest is for clients, right? It's crazy.
Well, I love it. And what I would say to folks who are listening, by all means, go to totalrelationship.com/model-FA to buy the book. However, similar to what Tyson just said, if you don't pay anything or do something in exchange for the book, you may not find value in it or actually open it up, and it just collects dust. So my offer to you is, if you would be so kind as to leave us a review on either Spotify or Apple, the two major platforms, and send me a screenshot of that review to david@modelfa.com. I will buy the book for you in exchange for that. And no limit. If there's 5 people that do it, 1 person that does it, 100 people that do it, I'm on the hook for the book itself if you leave us a review. So with that said, Tyson, like I said at the beginning, your energy is infectious. We're recording this on a Friday afternoon, and I'm geared up and excited for the weekend now. Appreciate your time. And for everyone listening, thank you for your time and attention. Please share this, leave a review, and come back on the next episode. But Tyson, thank you and enjoy your weekend.
Thanks for having us on.